Everyone to Fire Recovery Town Hall number 6. This is the post-fire winter storm preparedness group that has been meeting. And I'm very happy to welcome everyone who's able to join us this evening. Tonight, we're going to be getting an update on the debris removal process for properties that were impacted by the wildfires and discussing the rebuilding process and also the recent atmospheric river and the recovery efforts from the storm. We'll be hearing from our Monterey County Office of Emergency Services staff, from CalOES, as well as Monterey County Environmental Health, the Housing and Community Development Group, Public Works, and the County Assessor. Representatives from Caltrans and the Natural Resources Conservation Service are also joining us tonight. We'll be using a, let's see, before we begin, I always forget this part. Before we begin, here are just a few logistics for you who are joining us this evening. We will be using the Q&A function to take questions from attendees. Attendees who have joined via Zoom online will find the Q&A at the bottom of their screen. Questions can be entered at any time during the presentations, but we'll be holding all answers until after the panelists have had a chance to comment. And then I think that's pretty much it. You know that we're ready to roll, and I will turn this over to Kelsey Scanlon from the Office of Emergency Services, who's going to begin the presentation and roll us through it all. So thank you all very much for being here. And here we go, Kelsey. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Supervisor Adams. So we'll just get started real quick to talk about wildfire debris removal. We'll have Kendra Boyer from CalOES give a quick update, and then we'll have members from Environmental Health discuss some specific information that's been requested from the public, specifically regarding ineligible debris and damage claims. After we talk about debris removal, we'll allow for a Q&A before we move on to rebuilding. I just want to caveat this section of the agenda in that this is specifically for wildfire debris, not debris as a result of the atmospheric river mud and debris flows. So at this point in time, this is our sixth recovery webinar. We're now at this these last 3 columns right here, talking about debris removal, testing of the soil, and completion and certification. So if you aren't at one of these 3 phases, please notify Environmental Health or myself immediately, and we'll talk a little bit more about deadlines and consequences for not meeting those deadlines a little bit later on. So I'm actually going to hand it over to Kendra Boyer from CalOES to give an update on the government debris removal program.
Thanks, Kelsey. Thank you, Supervisor Adams. Good evening, everybody. Thanks for pulling up that dashboard, Kelsey. I can briefly go over some of our numbers here. Unfortunately, we did not have a lot of a delay to our debris removal operations with the atmospheric river that we experienced a couple of weeks ago. We were thinking that there might be a delay, but fortunately, we were able to keep a lot of work rolling to keep our program on track. So we were really fortunate there. So far, we've completed 49 properties. Debris removal has been completed on those properties, which is really great that we can move those on into the next phases. To kind of discuss hazard trees real quick, just because those 49 properties are properties that were cleared of structural debris. We still have a few properties that have hazard trees on them. We have approximately 6 properties with hazard trees. I know you're probably thinking that you've seen a lot of burn trees out there and how can there only be 6 properties with trees on them. Just to kind of reiterate what the eligibility criteria is for our program. I know I've spoken about it previously on some other meetings, but just to kind of reiterate, the trees that are eligible for our program are trees that are located on private property that are adjacent to publicly owned roadways or publicly maintained roadways that are dead or likely to die, and if they were to fall, they would affect the public right of way. So they may fall onto the county road. So let's say a tree that is 50 foot tall, that is 10 foot from the roadway would be considered an eligible tree if it was dead or likely to die due to the fire. So that's why you see such a small number of properties that have identified trees on them. Like I said, you may see a lot of other trees out there, but maybe they're along privately maintained roadways, or they may be too far set back from the road to be eligible for our program. Right now, we do have 2 debris removal crews working in Monterey County, and then we plan on bringing on barring any weather issues, which we don't foresee happening. We plan on starting tree removal on those 6 properties this coming Tuesday. So you may see some tree work starting from the state program. So what happens next? So after we've removed all the debris from the property, we've removed the trees from the property, we have to do our soil sampling, as Kelsey mentioned. So you may get to your property, you see all the debris is gone. What you are going to see is little flags all over the place. So we have to take, depending on the square footage of your structure, we have to take composite soil samples just so that we make sure that we have removed all the contamination from the property. So we compare the soil that was within your structure footprint to soil samples that were taken outside of the structure footprint to see what the soil conditions are without fire damage compared to the soil samples that were within the structure footprint. And again, that just allows us to compare the levels of metals and things like that so that we make sure that we've removed all of the burn debris contamination from your footprint. Again, once you see that the debris is gone, that doesn't mean that your property is cleared. That just means it's moved into the next process. So like I said, you will see those soil sample flags around. So we ask that you please don't move those around and don't actually go into that structure footprint until you've moved on into the completion part of the process. Just because if we do have to go back on the property to do anything, if let's say the soil sample results do come back that it needs to have additional soil removed, we want to make sure that we know exactly which areas had additional contamination that need to be removed so that we're not taking additional soil from areas that maybe didn't have any contamination. So that's the reason for all of those flags, is to identify, for us to identify which sections we've taken samples out of and what they correlate to as far as the sample numbers. You're also going to see erosion control. So once the samples come back that we have removed all the contamination, you're going to see erosion control. They don't typically remove the soil sample flags, so you'll most likely still see the flags there, and then they do the erosion control on top of it. So if you see flags and erosion control, you shouldn't be confused, but that's very normal for those flags to remain in place because it's a different team that does the erosion control than who does the soil sampling. So the erosion control consists of a hydro mulch, which starts off as a really dark green color so that they can see where they're placing it all over the property. But as it dries, it becomes a very neutral color that kind of matches in with the dirt and the soil of the structure footprint. And then you're also going to see straw wattles staked around the property, or around the disturbed areas rather. So that's not indicating that the property is done or that it's clear. That's just letting you know that it's a good indicator that you're moving along in the process and that you're getting close. So speaking of getting close, as Kelsey has up here on the screen, you can see that publicly facing dashboard where you can go and click on your property and see where you are in the process. I'll be sure to put the link to that dashboard in the chat here so that you can see that. But those of you who maybe don't have access to the chat, if you're just listening in on your phone, that's on CalOES's website. That's the wildfirerecovery.ca.gov. And if you scroll down, you'll see a little icon that looks like a graph chart or a bar chart. It's labeled Debris Operations Dashboard. You can click on that and see this information, and you'll be able to filter out by the county and click on your property and see just where you are in the process.
It's also on the Monterey County Recovery webpage as well.
Perfect. So that's all that I have right now on the debris removal updates. Kelsey, I'll turn it back to you.
Yeah, so just as a friendly reminder to everyone, if you have not done so already, right of entry permits for participating in the government program or the opt-out waiver indicating that you'll be removing the debris through a private contractor are due this Friday. That deadline has been extended multiple times. And so this is absolutely the firm date. You might see that on the CalOES website, it says the 15th. I just wanted to clarify that it takes us about 24 hours to process ROEs, and the county is closed on Monday. So Friday by close of business is the last possible opportunity to participate in the government-sponsored program. If you do not submit either form, the county will proceed with the abatement ordinance outlined that previously approved by the board, I believe, in October. And you can submit them to Kayla Johnson via email, or you can mail them to 1441 Schilling Place, though not recommended considering you know, the amount of time it takes to actually get to us. Or you can drop it off at the RMA building at 1441 Schilling Place. Kendra, do you want to talk about sign off real quick?
Sure thing, Kelsey. So once we've completed all those steps that I was just referring to, and we get into the erosion control has been completed, all the hazard trees have been removed, we go into what's called the final sign-off process. So as soon as we have the erosion control, we send a team out there that looks at the property, looks at the pre-work condition photographs, as well as the right of entry form to make sure that all the work that is supposed to have been done has been done. So we sign that final sign off, and the state will return it along with the soil sample clearance forms to the county. And at that point, the county will then be returning it to you, the property owners. I'll let Kelsey, I'll let you guys describe what happens once you receive the form.
Yeah, so once we receive it, it's sent to environmental health, where Rick Encarnacion signs off on it, and it's submitted to both the permitting department, so it's noted with your parcel number, but also it's sent to you via email, and you'll be notified via phone, whichever one you've listed on your right of entry permit. So you can look for that, and if you haven't gotten anything over the next couple of weeks and your property has been cleared, please give us a call. But otherwise, you can expect to be notified by environmental health that the property has been cleared. All right. I believe that's Maria Ferdine.
Hi, Kelsey. This is Rick Encarnacion. Good evening, everybody. Rick Encarnacion, Acting Bureau Chief for the Environmental Health Bureau. I'd like to introduce the Environmental Health Bureau team. They're online, and maybe they could raise their hands as I introduce them. They'll be providing some information regarding what we do for y'all. We have Maria Ferdine. She supervises our solid waste management services team. Randy McMurray, if you can wave. He supervises our hazardous materials management services team. Brian Azevedo, he supervises our cannabis team, but also he supervises our recycling resources and recovery services team. And Mr. Roger Van Horn, who supervises our environmental health review services team, our land use component of environmental health. This slide here, I'll have Maria provide some explanation on regarding ineligible debris, but she is the main point of contact, and there's some paperwork involved if this applies to you. Maria?
Okay. Good evening, everyone. My name is Maria Ferdine. I am supervisor for solid waste services, and this slide here is specifically regarding those properties that are ineligible for the public option of CalRecycle going onto the property and removing the debris. But in general, if you still have debris on your property, this process would still apply to you. So basically, property owners are responsible for the disposal if you opt out or you're ineligible for the public option. The primary reason for this process is because the landfills are not accepting fire debris without approval. So this is a way to assess the fire debris and also to get approval for the landfill to accept it. So with fire debris, the fire debris can come from various sources on the property. If you have a primary residence, the process for that would be to submit a work plan. The work plan will include a very prescriptive description of what debris is on the property and how it will be removed, where it's going to be disposed of, and who is doing that work. You will also need to have a asbestos contractor to look at the debris and test the soils to confirm that asbestos is either present or absent. You will also have to do a soil test of the property, just as Kendra described, and submit a report, the final report after the debris has been removed. If the fire debris is from a non-residential structure, a structure that is 120 square feet or smaller, and there was no waste material or hazardous materials housed in that structure, like fertilizer, you can get an exemption for that material. Describe the material, take photographs of the material, and contact the landfill and let them know what it is and get approval for that. The exemption application is a very simple application. It's something that I have. You can contact me and I can give that to you. There's also fire debris that is non-structural, like fencing or metal that was on the property, or woody debris. That can also go through an exemption process. Again, just describe the material, take photographs of the material, and contact the landfill and get approval from them. Again, the exemption application is available from me, and you have my contact information, both my email and phone number. And the debris removal application and the work plan is at the fire recovery site, and this is the address for it, both the application and the work plan.
Thanks, Maria.
Hello again, everybody. Rick Encarnacion, Environmental Health. I'd like to go over the summary abatement process, just a general overview of it. This doesn't pertain to many of you here online. This basically pertains to property owners who are not part of the government program and do not complete adequate cleanup through the private contractor program or private process. We're basically the health inspectors for the county. We're the same people that do health inspections for many, many businesses. And aside from helping people get back to building their homes safely, we also have the task of ensuring that the environment is protected and that people are protected from the environment and the dangers that may be present in the aftermath of a disaster. Due to the disasters to public health, welfare, and the environment, again, if those property owners that do not participate in the program and do not do an adequate cleanup, they may be subject to enforcement actions, and the county may abate the condition within the unincorporated territories of the county. The cost will be charged to the owners, and the county may, at its option, recover the same in administrative and civil actions. It's the same process that we have present for nuisance abatements. The details of this process is in our urgency ordinance. It contains the standard steps for due process, notifications, postings. There's an appeals process, but it's very short due to the nature of the issue at hand. And eventually, if there's no compliance, it'll include an abatement process again at the expense of the owner. But thankfully, I think this doesn't really apply to many of you here because many of you are here part of the process, and this only really pertains to those that basically we have been unable to contact or have not contacted us, or again, may not be doing adequate cleanup based on our assessments towards the conclusion of this process. Thank you.
All right, Kendra, you're back up with damage claims.
All right, thank you, ma'am. All right. So we do have it. So there have been some questions about properties that may have some damage following the debris removal. That doesn't necessarily mean that your property was a part of our program, but you maybe are adjacent to other properties, or you just obviously live in the community that was affected. So we do have a damage claim process that is in place. The information is going to go up onto the recovery webpage, but I'll also provide it to you here verbally, and then I'll also put it into the chat. But one of the first questions we always get is who can submit a damage claim? And as I just alluded to, anyone that feels like you may have had damage caused by the debris removal operation can submit a claim. Some of the common questions we get are about damages caused to private roads and things like that. There are some of those items are covered under the right of entry form that was signed by the property owner. Driveway damage and private roadway damage, those things are covered under that. However, it never hurts to file a damage claim so that it can be reviewed. What's the process for that damage claim? Once you have submitted the form, like I said, it's a form that you fill out and you can email it back to us. We'll receive that. We will look at all of the supporting documentation that goes with your property or with the incident surrounding the damage. Again, maybe you don't have a property that was in our program, but if you do, we'll look at your right of entry form, all the site assessments, and the photographs that are taken during debris removal. We do take a lot of photographs during the whole process, just so we make sure we're documenting everything. So one of the reasons why is so if there are claims of damage, we can look back and see exactly what took place so that we can make sure we rectify it appropriately. So you may get a phone call from someone once you do submit the claim from our damage claim section that's going to reach out to you to discuss the claim so we can get further clarification. Oftentimes it's difficult for us to determine just by reading the claim and looking at the site what actually went down. So we may reach out to you to request further clarity and to have a discussion so that you can explain it more in depth to us so that we can do a thorough evaluation. Once the determination has been made about whether or not the repairs will be made or not, then we'll be sure that we relay that information to you so that you're not wondering where you are in the claim process. And if you have submitted a damage claim and haven't heard back from anybody, we haven't received very many. We've only received, I believe, 2 so far, which is really good considering we've completed almost 400 properties of debris. So we haven't had very many yet. So, but if you have submitted one and you haven't heard back, you can always call or email the email address that you submitted it to. I'll just tell you right now, it is, the telephone number is 1-866-232-2739. And again, it's not an automated system. It is, you do get to a real person that will talk to you. Again, that phone number is 866-232-2739. Again, it is real people that are here working in Monterey County on this project. So you're not going to be sent, somewhere in Wisconsin or something to talk to someone else who's not familiar with this program. And the email address is WS as in Sam, P as in Peter, --damageclaims@outlook.com. And again, that is WS as in Sam, P as in Peter, --damageclaims, plural, @outlook.com. I'll be sure, like I said, to put that email address and telephone number in the chat as well. And I know that Kelsey's going to be putting it on the recovery webpage as well.
Thanks, Kendra. I think now we wanted to give people the opportunity to ask questions about debris removal specifically before we move on to the next section. So if you have a question, feel free to raise your hand. or you can put the question in the Q&A chat box. We already had one from Perry asking, in earlier meetings, you said the debris removal company would remove vehicles. My property was cleared last week, but they left a vehicle. Are they returning to remove the vehicle? The answer to that is yes. Before they can remove it though, the vehicle has to be identified by somebody in code enforcement. Right now, it's the Monterey County Sheriff's Office who has taken on the task to confirm the location of the vehicle, marking it with a green MC on it, and then reporting the burned out Hulk to the to Cal Recycle as well as the DMV, at which point the vehicle will then be removed. So if you see it on like a plastic white sheet, that means it's just waiting to be marked and then removed. Next question comes from an anonymous attendee. Will propane tanks be removed by CalOES? That's a question for Kendra.
Yeah, so it depends on if the propane tank is owned by the property owner or if it's owned by the gas company. If the gas company owns it, then they should come out and remove it if it was a leased tank. But if it is owned by the property owner, we're currently in process with our contractor for getting a contract to have those removed. As you're well aware, those are items that can't just be picked up and taken away in a debris truck with an excavator. Our counterparts over at Department of Toxics and Substance Control at DTSC has expressed that that's not a safe thing for our contractors to do without specific training. So we that's why we aren't removing if we're talking about, you know, like the 250 gallon or 500 gallon or 1,000 gallon propane tanks. That's why it's still remaining. But those are being tracked, and if it is owned by the individual, then it will be removed. And you may actually get a telephone call if it's unclear whether or not the propane tank is privately owned or if it belongs to, if it was rented.
Great. The next question is, can you tell me if Dolan Road has been evaluated for equipment access for debris removal since the atmospheric river?
That's a very good question. We have had people doing some reconnaissance. There was more reconnaissance done today. Unfortunately, they weren't back in from the field before we had this call, so I wasn't able to get an update before this. But do know that we are working it, and we have not forgotten you, and we will get to you.
Thank you. From 212 Pine Canyon, their driveway is damaged. Will that be fixed due to the ROE, or will it not be fixed due to the ROE?
So most likely, if it's driveway damage following debris removal on your property, most likely, to be completely honest, most likely it will not be repaired due to the language in the right of entry form. It is like I had spoken to previously. It's extremely large equipment, very, very heavy, removing, you know, tons and tons, literally, of debris from the properties. Lots of large trucks. And these driveways just aren't typically built to hold that weight. So it isn't uncommon for them to be damaged. And so that's why we don't typically repair them. Now, if it's damaged beyond repair, we can remove it for you if it's not been removed, so that you don't have to incur any additional cost of removing it as well. If that's the case, all you need to do is just fill out that damage claim form, and we can review it. And you can either fill out the damage claim form, or you can call the hotline as well and just speak to someone, so that way you can kind of get back in the queue quicker if you're not necessarily wanting us to repair the damage, but just wanting it removed, so that we can get a contractor out there to have it removed quicker.
Great, thanks. And then finally, will tree debris be removed, trees that were dropped by CAL FIRE specifically?
No, we're only allowed to remove the trees that were felled during our program. So if we drop the trees, we can remove them. But if they were felled by another source, albeit, CAL FIRE or PG&E, we're not able to remove those.
Great. Thanks so much, Kendra. With that, we're going to move on to the next section of the agenda. If you have more questions, feel free to pop them in the chat and we'll try to have somebody answer them as the presentation is going on. The next item is rebuilding. So we have Rick Encarnacion from Environmental Health, Josh Bowling from Building Services, Frida Escobar from RMA, Liz Gonzalez from RMA, and Steve, our assessor, to address some of the questions that we've received. Just as a reminder, we're in this section down here where we're talking about continuing the rebuild process. And for some of you, you're still up here and starting the process with RMA. So it really depends on, the amount of engagement you've had with RMA to date. So with that, I just wanted to remind everyone that the board order outlines a lot of information that you might find useful, specifically permit fees, unpermitted structures, temporary residences. There's a bunch of good stuff in there, so highly recommended that you go and check that out. The link is in the slide, but I'll also add it to the chat. All right, Frida.
Hi, thank you, Chelsea. Good evening, everyone. My name is Frida Escobar, and I am the Permit Center Manager with Housing and Community Development Department. And I just wanted to go ahead and just let folks know that please reach out to me if you're ready to start the conversations with regards to your rebuild. First and foremost, it's the 2020 application that needs to be filled out and completed. If you don't have that, feel free to email me or Kayla Johnson. She's got her email listed. It was listed earlier. I'm going to go ahead and let's see, I believe I have something that I can incorporate. When you get ready to submit, this is some really good information that I'd like you all to have. Let's see here if I can get it into the chat. This is where you will be submitting your application, and that's your 2020 recovery application. What that does is that's going to get you into our queue, and then we will go ahead and contact you and set up an appointment. It's a virtual appointment where we'll start the conversation with regards to what you would like to do and what the next steps are. In this meeting, our Chief Building Official, Joshua Bowling, is in attendance, as well as myself. My permit counter supervisor, Liz Gonzalez, she's also on this call as well, is there. And then we also have our planning chief, Eric Lunsford, who will also be joining on the conversation. And so basically we'll just start the dialogue as to what it is that you would like to do, and then assist in next step. Oh, in addition to that, also representatives from Environmental Health is involved. We'll review the ROE that we have on file and any other information that is related to your parcel. So if you haven't, or if you're ready to start that process and would like to set up an appointment, please reach out to me, and then we will go. And as Kelsey mentioned earlier, the board order that she just posted, there's a lot of really good information with regards to fee waivers, with regards to our permitting process. And just one last thing I'd like to also say about our permit process is these applications do receive priority processing. That means they go to the very top. What I can do for you is I will advocate to make sure that these permits are moving along and help with any dialogues if they get stuck along the way. I'll reach out to any of the other departments and assist if needed. So please reach out to myself, shoot me an email if you have any questions or if there's anything I can do to support you. Again, Liz Gonzalez is my counter supervisor. she's responsible for supervising the permit technician team. And then also Kayla Johnson is your go-to with regards to submitting your ROE forms and or if you would like to set an appointment to start the conversation. Okay. Thank you.
Rita?
Yes.
All right, temporary residences.
Good evening, everybody. Again, this is Rick Encarnacion, Environmental Health. I'd like to turn it over to the supervisor for our Environmental Health Review Services, our land use group, Mr. Roger Van Horn. He'll be in charge of the team that looks over and coordinates with Frida and Josh regarding building permits. To go over this slide. Roger? Oh, you're on mute.
How's that better? Sorry about that. When we get the building permit applications, then we will go over all of the forms that need to be done. And also I want to interject here that once we get the phase 2 sign off, then we also put that in the parcel number so it is in our file as far as the septic system. But then, excuse me, so we already have that in file. And then we will go through what you need to do as far as getting temporary residency on the property to make sure that you can live either in a recreational vehicle or a trailer. And there are certain requirements that you have to meet, which would be either if your septic system, your existing septic system has been evaluated and it's still functioning, you can hook up to that. If the water system, or if you were on a water system and it was not damaged, you can hook up to that water system. Or if you're on a private well, we will want to make sure that that private well still is functioning properly. So we will look at that also. Then of course the mobile homes will have to meet all the requirements that's set forth by the State Department of Housing, and any of the other requirements, the building requirements that we will look at. But you know, we're trying to get you back on the property as quickly as possible, and we will do everything that we can to make sure that you can move back on your property so that you're there during the rebuild process. If you have any questions, my information is on the next page, I think. Yeah. So reach out to me and we will do everything that we can to make sure that it's as easy as possible to get you back on your property. And we will go over the requirements that you're going to need to meet. So please feel free to reach out to me as far as any water problems or questions, as well as any septic system questions. Thank you.
So we actually have a surprise guest for you. Oh, wait, no, that's the next slide. Still a surprise guest, but we have Steve, our assessor here, to talk a little bit about property tax assessments post-fire.
Great. Thank you very much. I didn't know I was a surprise guest, but I'll take it. Good evening, everybody. And foremost, the assessor is here to help you with your property taxes and provide reductions in your assessments accordingly. Whenever a disaster occurs in Monterey County, or any county for that matter, but specifically for Monterey County, what we will do is we will work with the Building and Planning Department and also the Office of Emergency Services to try and identify all the properties that have been impacted by fires or floods or what have you. So toward that end, what we do is we get a listing of all the impacted properties, and we try to reach out to everybody, and we'll mail them a disaster relief form. So once you get that form, it's best for you to fill it out and send it to us as quickly as possible, along with any documentations, loss in value. And as Kendra said, if you have any photos that show the property damage, that's helpful as well. And if you have not received a form from our office, I did put a link to the forms on the chat, and you can access them on our website. It's very easy to do that. If you don't have internet access, you can call our office and we can send them to you. So what happens when we get a application for property tax relief is, depending upon the damage to the structure, we reduce your taxes until which time you rebuild the property. And at that time, when you rebuild the property, we do not reassess it like it's a new property. As long as it's pretty much the same, I think you have a certain bit of leeway. I don't know the exact thing, 10% in increased square footage. We put the value that was back on the roll. So you do not get reassessed. You do not get a higher tax assessment. In my many years, I've seen floods and fires, and we've done this many, many times. There are instances where there are damage to land. So when we had the big floods going back to, I can't even remember when, along Carmel River, a lot of people lost their land. We reduced the value on the land. So it doesn't have to be just the structures. If you can demonstrate significant damage to the land, we will give you a property tax reduction to the land as well. So we're here to help you in any way, to give you that property tax relief, whatever that can do to help you. And I might add something too that you should be aware of. There was a recent proposition voted in by the voters in November, Proposition 19. And one of the points of the proposition, one thing that was in there that you should be aware of if you've been impacted by fires, for example. And one of the reasons this came up was because the big Sonoma fires, when people were rebuilding, they discovered that it was too expensive to rebuild, so they wanted to move to another county. Not that I want anybody to ever leave Monterey County, but should you choose to do so under Proposition 19, now you can transfer your low base year value to outside of Monterey County. So you could buy a home if you've been impacted by the fire in another county. But that does not take effect until April 1st. So I wouldn't rush to do that. I would consult our office to get as much information as possible should you be thinking along those lines. So bottom line, we're here to help you like everybody else in the county. Feel free to call us at any time. Our number is on our website. And as I mentioned, the disaster relief form is on our website. And if you have any questions, I'll be glad to answer them at the end of this segment. Thank you very much.
Thanks, Steve. All right, and now like the actual surprise guest. We have Dan Bertoldi to talk about some incentives for rebuilding.
Thank you so much. So first I want to thank Supervisor Adams and the Monterey County OES team for having me here this evening. So my name is Dan Bertoldi with Central Coast Community Energy. We are your community choice electricity provider, serving the communities of Monterey County and the greater Central Coast region. So I'm here to let you know about a new program that we have called the New Construction Electrification Program, which we've made available for homeowners who lost their homes in the 2020 wildfires. So if you lost a single family home in the fires, we are offering a $5,000 cash incentive to our customers to build back all electric. So that means No natural gas or propane is piped through the home when you do the rebuild. We're also offering $2,500 to build back an accessory dwelling unit, or $2,500 for each unit if you're building back a multi-family dwelling housing unit. So in addition, we also provide us, if you're going to be installing a level 2 electric vehicle charger for your home, we offer $600 for your single family home or ADU. And then we'll also offer $1,000 per unit for an MUD rebuild. So I'm going to just drop our program information, which has in the chat box. I'm going to put in our website as well as a contact email that you could reach us at. For those of you on the phone, you could reach us at programs@3ce.org. That's the number 3ce.org. You could also go to our website, which is 3cenergy.org. Thank you very much, everyone. Really appreciate it.
Thanks, Dan. All right, we're going to do Q&A for this segment of the agenda. So specifically questions regarding rebuilding, temporary dwellings, your taxes, incentives for rebuilding. We had one individual ask, will the RMA waive permit fees for temporary housing, mobile home foundation systems? And Frida's response was, fire-related building permit fees will be waived. Please email me your contact information so I may assist you in the request. So are there any other questions about rebuilding post-wildfire?
Excuse me, Kelsey. Just want to clarify with regards to fee waivers. Any questions customers might have. This being one of them, I would suggest that they just contact me so that I can go ahead and loop in, our subject matter experts in relations to building and/or planning, so we can have that conversation. But the board report that you indicated is a great resource with regards to what fees will be waived and what will not. But we can go ahead and go into detail with them privately. Thank you.
Great, thank you, Frida. All right, last opportunity for questions regarding debris removal. Rebuilding. What is the timeline for applications that have been submitted from start to finish?
Okay, with regards to timelines, as soon as we receive the application and complete submittal, then the routing process starts. We route to plan check, and then to the other regulatory departments that need to sign off before we can actually finalize it. Time, it depends. Let me give you an example of what a delay could be. If somebody submits a building plan and it's going through plan check, and there are corrections, as soon as we get those corrections back, we can keep the permit moving. So it's really, really important that you keep an eye on that. Owners, please work with your design architects as well as your contractors to make sure that the communication is flowing. As indicated and per the board order or the ordinance that's in place, these applications receive priority processing. That means they go to the very top. So I don't, maybe Joshua Bowling, if you're on, if you can kind of give what timelines a priority process would be through plan check at this current time.
Yes, hi, this is Joshua Bowling, building official for the County of Monterey. So yes, when plans come in, they will be moved to the top of the line. Whatever project the plan checker is working on, at that point, they will finish it, takes them a day or two, and then they will jump into the fire rebuild project. And at that point, depending how extensive the project is, they'll get corrections out within a couple days. and then it'll be up to the applicant to be able to respond to those. Again, there are multiple departments. There's, fire, health, whatever other department will be working on that. So for those departments, again, I can't speak for them, but my understanding is we will all be moving the projects to the top of the line. But as Frida stated, it'll be really up to the applicant to keep their project moving, because once the corrections are issued, then you're going to want to get those back. You're going to want to get back your corrections to us as soon as possible. Thank you.
Thank you.
All right, the next question is, what's the turnaround time we can expect for voicemails and or emails, more or less than a week?
With regards to HCD or Housing and Community Development, the expectation is that we return them within 24 to 48 hours. We've had a little hiccup with our building where we've had to kind of move staff over to other buildings because our building is in need of repair. So that's delayed some of the responses. If for some reason you're not getting a call back, feel free to email myself. Liz Gonzalez is also available to assist in returning any calls that are coming through that haven't received. And more times than not, there's status updates on where they are in the application. We'll be happy to get back to them as soon as possible. We apologize, there has been some delays where we're trying to move through these applications and these requests for information as quickly as possible. So please understand, be patient with us. We're trying to get through everyone as quickly as we can. So if there is anyone that has not had a call back or still need information, shoot me an email and I will be clearing my box this evening. I'll make sure that I return your call tomorrow. Thank you.
Hi, this is Sarah in Supervisor Adams' office, and I'm jumping in just quickly to give Kelsey a little bit of support on the Q&A here. We have a couple of additional questions that have come in. One from Mary DeGroat. Some time ago, there was mention that phase 2 would be completed in March. Given the soil sampling, erosion control, and hydro mulching step up to final sign-off, is there any update on the timing of the completion of the phase 2 debris removal? I think that's a question back to CalOES.
Yeah, I can take that. Yeah, I do believe that we will still be completed in March.
Great, thank you.
Mm-hmm.
The next question might be for environmental health, Roger Horn. The question is, if septic tank passes testing before the rebuild so that you can have a motorhome on the property during the rebuild, does it have to be retested after the home is finished?
No, once it has its evaluation, that will stay as far as wherever in the rebuild or whatever. The only difference would be is if they're planning on adding additional bedrooms, we may have to look at the size of the septic tank that was originally installed. But other than that, they would not have to do another reevaluation.
Thank you. There's a follow-up question from the same person. What type of evaluation needs to be done?
Would have to be a total complete evaluation of the tank and the leach fields. We have a standard performance evaluation that would be required, and that is a examination of the tank itself, and then a snake and locate of the leach fields to make sure that they were not damaged, and then a flow test.
Thank you for that.
Mm-hmm.
And we have another question here that looks to be for our county assessor, Steve Vagnini. Will there be any property tax reduction for homes that survived the fire, yet still exist in a burn zone where neighbor homes are visibly destroyed and there are concerns about debris flow?
Okay, that's a good question. And you would not be eligible for a tax reduction under property tax relief for a disaster. However, come the lien date, which is January 1st of the year, and if it occurred, what you're talking about, as of January 1st, and you could demonstrate that as a result of what you're talking about, that the property has lost value, and it not just lost value, that your assessed valuation is now lower or higher rather than the market value, then you would be eligible for some sort of property tax relief. So if, to summarize, it's a little complicated. I would call our office and say, okay, I live in an area that was affected by the fire. January 1st, there's a lot of burned out homes. As a result of that, our house is now being assessed at $800,000, but as a result of what occurred, we could not get $800,000. We'd be lucky to get 7. We will take that into consideration. If that's the fact, we'll give you some sort of property tax relief.
Thank you for that response. That's very helpful. I'm not seeing any other questions in the Q&A, and I'm not seeing any hands raised in the attendees. So Kelsey, it looks like we can move on to the next section of the agenda, which I believe is talking about the atmospheric river impacts.
Cool, thank you. All right, so this portion of the recovery town hall will be specifically about post-fire atmospheric river recovery. We have some information from environmental health about waste management services. We have information about road closures, not from Berkeley Lint, but from Kevin Dobrinsky from Caltrans and Randy Ishii from Monterey County Public Works. We have information about mud removal. We have Cynthia Cowell from Small Business Administration, and Desi Ramirez wasn't able to make it, but I'll provide some information on additional resources for post-fire debris and watershed assessments. So with that, I'm going to hand it over to Environmental Health.
Good evening again, everybody. Rick Encarnacion, Environmental Health. Just want to give you a little update on what we've been doing with regards to the landslide and the Highway 1 closure that affected Big Sur. We quickly mobilized to work with our waste hauling services. However, because of the location, they could not circle back round south. So we had to get services from out of the county, from San Luis Obispo County, and we were able to obtain roll-offs through a vendor from out of the county. And in the chat, I posted a link where kind of like provides a rolling blog of updates for the Big Sur residents of what we're trying to do. So we're coordinating with Big Sur residents. We have a communication plan to ensure that, at least for waste services, they're provided at the south end. Next slide, please. In the chat, I put the link to this directly to that where it says where that arrow is pointing, Big Sur Waste. Again, that's like a rolling blog where we're providing updates regarding what we're doing for waste services. Next slide. Because of the disaster, certain normal operations again have been suspended. You know, for example, curbside pickup. But it is a disaster, and we're coordinating again with who we can so that we could provide and mitigate public health hazards. Next slide. Kind of like what we did for the burned areas, you know, providing roll-offs where people can take their trash and debris. And again, for the Big Sur south of the disaster area, Waste Management, our typical hauler, couldn't provide services because they could not go back around like what they did last time when the bridge went out. But for the burn areas, we did provide some roll-offs. Currently, we don't have any requests for that areas. Operations there are fairly back to normal. Listed on this slide is the contact for people to call Waste Management if there's any questions.
All right, I'm going to hand it over to Kevin. Is he on the call?
I
Hi,
sure
Kevin.
am.
Welcome.
Hi, thank you. A pleasure to be with your community and with your team. I'm so personally and professionally impressed by the way you've all thrown yourselves together for this important work. Highway 1 is closed, of course, at Rat Creek, which is mile 30.2. We've been able to shrink the closures around Rat Creek on the northern end. We've been able to move it down to Lime Creek, which is just 2 miles above Rat Creek. That will be the landmark limit for public travel south on Highway 1. The location is fortuitous in that the closure is south of the last business. It's south of Essalon. And so it's south of the Big Sur coast. We want to make sure and get the word out to everyone that Big Sur is open for business from the north. But you will be able to approach Rat Creek, but be turned around at Lime Creek, just 2 miles north of that. We've been able to move the southern closure up this week. It's now just north of Pacific Valley. We hope by the 22nd of February to be able to move the southern closure up to post mile 27.3, so roughly 3 miles south of Rat Creek, and establish a turnaround there at the Big Creek Vista Point. We continue to make excellent progress only 2 weeks after the slide out of the road in debris cleanup, but there's still much work to be done, especially in terms of working at multiple locations on either side of Rat Creek for plugged culverts that were overwhelmed by the debris flow. There's still rockfall, there's still stabilization and repair of roadway to do that's still inside the closure. Our crews are there 7 days a week. There's no current estimate for timeline when the assessment phase. We're still right in the middle of the assessment phase at Rat Creek to assess the conditions on the ground in terms of topography, soil stabilization, what things look like farther up the canyon and what we might expect in future storms, to be able to get all the information we need to inform an alternative for an option going forward on what a repair might look like. It's still early days. I was up there a week ago from the north, and I was up there today approaching from the south. We've made a lot of progress on clearing Highway 1 on either side of Rat Creek, and we made tremendous progress in removing debris from the canyon from Rat Creek itself. They had 4 huge excavators that looked like ballet, and bulldozers and trucks cycling in and out all the hours that I was there. So we hope to keep informing Monterey County and the public about our progress on that. At present, we're still in the assessment phase, have not made a determination of a design alternative for the repair. And once we do, then that will allow us to estimate possible closure time and cost estimate for the repair.
Great, thanks so much, Kevin. Randy Ishii from Public Works, do you want to give a quick update?
Good evening, everyone. This is Randy Ishii. I'm the Director of Public Works, Facilities, and Parks for the county. And during the atmospheric river events, we did experience damages in the county, not just in one location, but throughout the county, ranging from the Big Sur coastline to the peninsula, down along the River Road corridor on the west side of the Salinas Valley, and even areas on the east side of the Salinas Valley. Over the last couple weeks, staff and their contractors have been working nonstop to remove debris from the roadways and get them to a condition where the public can use the roads again. Of the roads I've mentioned, places like Pine Canyon Road have had emergency culvert replacements performed, and we've completed most of those, including up on Pine Canyon Road, as well as Pine Canyon and Live Oak Way. And the debris that's come down on River Road from approximately State Route 68 south to Chula River Road, the debris has, for the most part, been cleared and is going to be completely removed, possibly by the end of next week. South of Chula River Road and down to Gonzales River Road is another area where, as our first actions take us, we immediately clear an emergency access path for the local residents as well as first responders. There's a copious amount of material still out there, but here again, we have it slated to have that material removed in the next couple weeks. Now, further south on River Road, from Gonzales River Road south to Foothill and the Fort Romeo region, there's both extensive mud flow and debris material still in the road shoulders, albeit there's an emergency access path for the local residents and first responders. And there's also damages that are still being discovered on that roadway. There's a very sizable culvert repair that will need to be conducted, and there's other areas south of Foothill Road where we still need to uncover more of the road from all the debris that has covered the roadway. That's something that's still in progress, and our contractors are working rapidly on. I mentioned that there were debris flows and damages on the east side of the Salinas Valley, in areas like Metz Road and Bitterwater Road. However, those areas have had their debris removed, and repairs have been conducted on those roads. Now in the South County, we have some damages along Milpitas Road that we're still addressing. And there's a U.S. Forest Service Forest Highway called Nacimiento Ferguson Road that connects State Route 1 on the west to US 101 on the east. Staff here again immediately mobilized right after the rains and used the same kind of equipment you imagine at a rock quarry and cleared an emergency path all the way out to State Route 1. However, there are extensive damages that are still being identified along that roadway that are still being inventoried and estimates being prepared. Those are in progress and will be completed within the next several days that we'll be sharing with the partners such as the U.S. Forest Service. Currently, the road is open to the local residents only, and it is so closed by a U.S. Forest Service forest order, and it is not open to the general public. Please keep an eye out on our road closure information page for any further updates, which I will leave the link to it in the chat for today. And it is something available on the county website, as well as on the free app called Monterey County Connect, available from the app stores. And that concludes my report, and I open back up to you, Kelsey.
Thanks, Randy. All right, next up we have Liz Gonzalez and Josh Bowling from RMA to talk about what to do with all the mud on your property post atmospheric river.
Okay, good evening, Liz Gonzalez. I'll just start with mud debris on private property. First and foremost, we want to mitigate the hazard. The county has always provided emergency permits, a quick turnaround to help the private owner deal with the emergency, especially on the coastal zone. In the coastal zone, we work closely with the Coastal Commission to get that emergency permit to the applicant. And generally, there's a follow-up coastal permit once we get the emergency mitigated. Josh?
Hello, Josh Bowling, County of Monterey, HCD Building Services. When you move forward to move the dirt either off your property or to move it back on your property, and when you're going to move it back on your property and intend to spread it out on your property or to use it for construction, you are going to need a construction permit to do that. And when you move it back on your property, we are going to want to see how you're going to contain the soil and what type of erosion control measures you are going to put in place to potentially slow down or stop any future erosion coming off of the property. So just again, if you are going to put the dirt back on your property and intend it for use, you are going to need a permit. If you remove it and haul it off to the dump, at that point, we are not going to require a permit. Thank you.
All right, thanks, guys. Cynthia Cowell from Small Business Administration.
Good afternoon, folks. Thank you so much for having SBA at your meeting. As far as the atmospheric river goes, we haven't received a request for preliminary damage assessments yet from the county, but we will be looking at possible SBA help once we get that. So far from the fires, we've approved 14 loans in Monterey County for $1,513,100. The physical damage deadline did pass in December, but businesses are still eligible for economic injury disaster loans. This is working capital to help keep a business running until business picks up again. And you can apply online. Just go to sba.gov/disaster and choose the non-COVID option. And we can help. We can walk you through the application if you need help. That number would be 800-659-2955. And you can also go online to sba.gov/disaster and find any help that's available due to a declared disaster. Thank you.
Thank you. So real quickly, Cynthia had mentioned something. We need the community's assistance in getting full damage assessments. So if you are a property owner, renter, or business owner that was impacted by the atmospheric river, we need you to submit a survey. And it is encouraged that there's duplicative of the same survey for both the renter and the property owner. We're just trying to get the full total amount of destruction and loss. So say you have a property and there's 3 tenants on it and 2 of them work from home. So you have the property owner who's making a claim for the residential structure that they own, the renters that are now displaced, and then each of the renters also should be submitting one. And if they were working from home or had a business out of the property, they need to list those damages as well. So we have to meet a certain threshold to qualify for certain assistance. And so the faster we get that information and the more information you provide about the damages that you incurred, the faster we can get you low interest rate loans or grants. So this will be up on the website tomorrow under the damage assessments tab. And you can just click on the URL. It's both in English and Spanish, so feel free to share it with your friends or neighbors. And if you have any questions, you can give us or the SBA a call. Before I go to the next slide, I believe Randy Ishii is actually, no, the next slide will be real quick. if your home was impacted by mud or debris flows, and you did not originally receive an assessment from the National Resource Conservation Service and would like to, we recommend that you reach out to Desi Ramirez. A lot of those canyons were not flushed out. So the mud flows that you incurred this past winter will likely occur again over the next 3 years. So if you'd like to avoid that, I highly recommend that you call them. They'll give you a free technical assessment. And if the property was damaged but not destroyed, they'll likely recommend the inclusion of your property in the Emergency Watershed Protection Program. Like I said, the assessment is free. And then if you choose to participate in the program, it's the federal government assumes 75% of the cost and the property owner assumes 25% of the cost, which I can guarantee you is a lot less than what you would either pay in rebuilding, rehabilitation, or even insurance. So with that, we'll go on to Q&A. Specifically, if you have questions for Randy Ishii, if you could ask them now, that's specifically for Public Works. But I'm going to hand it over to Sarah Hardgrave to manage the Q&A.
Thank you, Kelsey. Again, Sarah Hardgrave with Supervisor Adams' office. We have one question so far, which is a question about financial assistance and reimbursement for the removal of mud and debris. I'm not sure, Kelsey, if you would be able to answer that question, or if that's someone from Housing and Community Development.
At this time, our office is not offering any financial assistance or reimbursement for removal of mud or debris. The county did proclaim, and I believe the state did proclaim as well, for debris on Highway 1, but at this point there is no federal declaration of an emergency, or excuse me, of a disaster, which means there is no federal funding support for mud debris removal as a result of the atmospheric river.
And Kelsey, maybe it would be helpful to hear a little bit about what happened last year in a similar example in the Chular area, where there was also a debris flow that did not end up qualifying for any kind of financial assistance.
Yeah, so the Chular flood from 2019 was, I think it was about 20 homes that were damaged, and it was a result of flash flooding from the Chular Canyon, I believe. Randy, you would remember best.
Yes, it was.
And so those homes, while not red tagged, did incur damage, and they did not qualify for California disaster assistance, nor was individual assistance offered by FEMA through a presidential declaration.
Thank you, Kelsey. So what I'm hearing you say is that the primary difference between the debris removal that's happening right now for the fires is that those fire events did have the state disaster declaration, which made them eligible for the government debris removal program, but that does not apply in the case of the current atmospheric river.
That's correct. The county, in addition to 21 other counties, incurred a mass quantity of destruction and debris as a result of the wildfires, where in this case, I believe it was just us and one other county. And so the state as a whole did not meet the thresholds required for presidential declaration.
Great, and I'm seeing that Gary Millay, our emergency services manager, would like to chime in. Gary, I think you can speak now.
Hi, can you hear me?
Yep.
Okay, so as Kelsey stated, the county proclaimed a local emergency for this current atmospheric river, and the state is in the process of evaluating all of the counties in the state to determine if there is enough damage for them to proclaim a state emergency. There is not enough damage for the federal government to proclaim a national disaster. So we would be limited to California Disaster Assistance Act assistance if that was offered by the state, at which time for this incident is still unknown, but it is yet to be determined. The Chular incident in 2019 was awarded California Disaster Assistance Act on a limited basis for public property only, not for private property. So the Chular school that sustained $1.5 million damage to their soccer field did qualify for assistance, and that was covered by the state at 75%. Does that answer some of the questions?
Yes, Gary, thank you. That's very helpful. I just wanted to kind of probe a little more into the question that was asked by the public. So thank you for that.
Yeah, so just be assured that as part of our normal process, I did request of the governor on behalf of the Office of Emergency Services, both public and individual assistance if they offer that for this disaster. So that request was made, and as the state determines what they're going to do, that will funnel to the SBA. So those programs will probably be made available at some point.
Thank you, Gary. That's very helpful. And as more information becomes available, the county will be providing it and letting property owners know what's out there.
And Kelsey will tell you that we try to keep our OES website completely updated with all of those actions and advice for our constituents, so they can get current information to help them.
Thank you for that. Very helpful information. I'm not seeing any other questions in the Q&A, and I'm not seeing any hands raised. But this is our end part of our meeting this evening, and so if there are any last questions, you can use the raise your hand function, or you can type a question into the Q&A and we'd be happy to answer it. Give folks just another minute. I'm not seeing any more questions come in, so I just want to say in closing a really big thank you to all of our presenters this evening. Really appreciate all of the work, especially from Kelsey Scanlon and the Office of Emergency Services, to put these webinars together and make sure we have all of the right experts here to help share the information that you all need. And on behalf of Supervisor Adams and the District 5 office, our hearts are with you. This has been an incredibly tough year. It's been incredible to see these natural disasters happen on top of the pandemic that we're all experiencing. And so just know that we know this is a very hard time, and we're doing everything we can to provide the information that you need. I do see one comment here. Thank you for putting this together. Thank you for that, Mr. Smith. And we have one hand raised from Kath 8830. And if you would like to share your question, you can unmute yourself.
Yes, how do we arrange to have a car destroyed by the fire removed from the property? The house and all the debris has been removed except for this burned car. Now, I called the sheriff's department and they have been out to see the car, but I don't know how we take the next step to get the car removed.
Thank you for that. Kelsey, do you have an answer to that question?
So the structure wasn't destroyed, but the vehicle was?
The structure was destroyed and removed.
Was that the Ford F-150 with the red and white stripes?
Nope, it was the Audi.
Is it completely burned out?
Oh, yeah.
Okay, will you send me an email and we'll make sure that somebody goes out and looks at it tomorrow?
Well, Kelsey, I believe that the sheriff has already been out there. I talked to them yesterday. And,
okay.
Yeah,
So did they mark it with a green MC?
Yes, they did.
Okay, great. So what happens next is that comes through my office and we submit it to the state. So that's, I think, I assume the first thing on my to-do list tomorrow once they submit it to me, at which point it goes to the state and they'll send somebody out to remove the burned out Hulk.
Thank you, Kelsey.
Crushing it.
Thank you for that last question. And I'm not seeing any other hands raised or any questions in the Q&A. So again, thank you everyone this evening for joining us. Please check the County Office of Emergency website for information or answers to questions that you may have after this meeting. All of us are available by email and a lot of good links were provided in the chat. So we certainly hope this has been a useful meeting and thank you everyone. Have a good evening.
Thank you, everyone.
Thank you.